Hey, Chris Lipe here, and I'm going to walk you through how to get massive sounding rhythm guitars. Getting big rhythm guitars is more than just finding the right tone or choosing the right guitar. It's about learning the ingredients and the balances. Lots of double tracking, but it's more than that still. Using unlikely sounds and different guitars, different types of layers, slightly different approaches and ways to play that complement one another. All of these things play a huge part in creating that wall that is often sought after, but seldomly gotten. If you'd like more help dissecting your signal chain and recording guitars in the box in general, click the link below and download my PDF, and I'll give you the starting points and quite a few other action points to pursue further. Yes, I'm holding a Telly, and no, it's not the only guitar we used to get this sound. I'm going to break down what I've done and why I've done it in this lesson. You may recognize this sound from another video I've done on this channel, and you may recognize this style from a band called Alice in Chains. This type of approach is sort of a modernized DAW approach to some of the things that that band and their producer did with their guitar production, using a lot of things a little bit. The first thing I'd like to point out here is that in order to achieve massive sounding guitars, you often need a contrast element, a melodic, cleaner element. That is what this is doing. Very simple Waves GTR setup. Nothing special here. You just get here by tweaking and playing with the line and coming up with something that works with your touch, with your approach. Next, I grab my P90 loaded PRS and I lay down very, very crunchy sound, but it's not maybe what it might seem. Before I track, I take, this is a standard tuned guitar, got 12s on here. I take my low string, and we go all the way down to C. Now, I don't play the rest of the guitar here. For these particular tracks, I'm adding that low sound with this slinky E, and then I fill out the rest of the depth in standard tuning. Here are those soloed. In context, those are pretty flat sounding, but they have a ton of depth, or they contribute to a ton of depth. There's a couple things I'm doing here that we really need to make sure we're conscious of. The performance is one thing. It's drug a little bit. I'm not pushing the beat. I'm being very sparse. I want the layer and I want the sizzle of that sound that these provide. And of course, I want that low C, but I don't want it to be muddy. So I'm using, again, just standard GTR. I've got the air up a little bit here. These are linked, and then they're panned. I've got each of them panned, hard left, hard right. But, nothing special here. What I'm doing after the amp is really what we need to hone in on. I am getting rid of a lot of lows. And you'd think, I should have lows on my beefiest guitar parts. No, actually, it's the opposite. We have that low note, but we don't want it to get in the way of the bass. So listen, if I play these lines and bypass, whoa. There's a lot of lows that I'm taking out. You can see in my curve. If I go back over to this EQ here, I'm not only rolling off the lows, I am shelving down the lows quite a bit by 10 dB. The reason I'm doing this is because this is not a very tight low end. You know, when I listen to this, it's wumpy, it's sloppy. I want the beef and the distortion in that low sound, but I want something else to bring out that tight low end and that tight low mid. I've also, in every one of these guitar tracks you're going to see, I have taken out some mid-range. Mid-range buildup on multi-tracking rhythm electric guitars is real. You have to get rid of that mid-range and find out where this stuff is. Listen just to this track. That sound, that cardboardy, mid-rangey, right around 1K sound, it just builds up. It's the way that electric guitars, they function in that frequency spectrum. And so when we want to double for the sake of detail, we want to make sure that we are using that in moderation, and that means a healthy cut on virtually every track we use. Okay? So listen to these. But then listen here to this. These have got, in addition to a different amp, and being played with a different guitar, yes, a telly, and yes, performed on two different pickup patterns. The first one was done with a low, or with a tone roll off, and on the bridge pickup, doesn't sound like much by itself at all. The second one was done on the middle pickup with the tone wide open. But I need to point something else out here too. I'm not just playing a different guitar with a different tone. I'm actually playing differently. This is standard tuned. Listen to what I do with these approaches. See how I'm strumming in advance? I've got these slow strums going on, like this. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. It's providing this anticipated sort of feel that because the rest of the rhythms are locked in, you have this chimey aspect that's happening. Listen again. Those are right on. Now listen to that one. Dun, ring. When you combine that here, there's a motion that's happening with this cleaner sounding guitar that you couldn't articulate with that beefier sound, but you need that beefier sound that I did with the PRS to create that sustainy sound. So they're both fulfilling their own roles. And the way things are played, it's huge here. Playing things differently in the midst of different tones is what's going to fill out and create a more massive sound, that variance, strategic variance. Okay, but there's more. Look here. The very things that I'm cutting, if I go over here to my PRS, notice how I've cut the low mids? I'm actually boosting those low mids. I've actually got more regular mids cut out to get rid of that cardboardy sound. Listen to these without their EQ. Hear how papery they sound? Now I'm going to bring this back in. Yes. So I'm actually, with the EQ and the performance, the articulation, I'm filling out where I intentionally cause the other one to lack a bit more because I realize that that tone and that performance doesn't do those things as well. And check out this particular one. I'm intentionally playing the fifth down. So when we combine that with the low-tuned drop C single note thing that I did on the PRS, we fill out the power chord. But I only did that on one of these telly tracks. We've actually got 3 telly tracks going on here, and they're all played with a slightly different approach. We've got this one. It's a bit more plodding and robotic. We've got this one, which has more of those slow strums, and it has the fifth accentuated at the bottom of each chord. The slow strums, that's important. And then we've got this third telly track down here. I'm actually playing 2 chords. And this one is panned closer to the center. It's providing a needed percussion brightness that is different from the other tracks. Check this out. I have gotten rid of a lot of the presence, and I'm compressing this one after the amp quite a bit. I want to maintain that jangly sound. I'm also getting rid of the low roll-off is quite a bit higher on this one. The low filter is quite a bit higher in frequency, as well as getting rid of this jangly sound. Now listen to this one without. There's too much body there. And it's too present. It's almost too harsh. But by adding this and compressing it, I take out the transients a little bit. You still hear that presence, you hear that sizzle that we need, but it's an articulated sizzle, not a messy sizzle, which we also need. So it's about adding different things in different ways. This particular approach, I'm strumming that whole chord. And letting that be layered in, and I'm strumming it slowly, so you get that ring, ring, ring. Listen to the performance. Right there. Slow strums in addition to maintaining the rhythm. And then finally, we've got this octave line providing some counter motion. Pretty distorted. We've gone back to the hot, and I'm not EQing this one at all. In addition, I'm not removing anything out of this sound because there's a lot of motion going on here, and we are okay with this one filling out a bit more in the sound spectrum. So we've got the same hot amp we were using for the PRS, and this was also tracked with the PRS. So when we're playing basically the same part lots of different ways, we have to use this subtractive and strategically additive approach and tweak our playing a little bit to fill out and use different textures in a way that each one is the most strong, and then remove in ways where they might be not doing something the way that you want them to do, like I talked about earlier. But when we've got this octave line that's, really beefy and articulated and unique, or we've got the clean line, like I showed you at the beginning of the video, these can take up more space in the mix. Let's listen to the full soundscape of all of these over those two chords at the end. And really, make sure you're listening in headphones or good studio monitors. Really take in the variety here and how everything fits together. If you listen really carefully, you can hear these different parts peeking out every once in a while. But those cleaner telly lines filling out the low mids, the low mid scooped and tinkly and wumpy sound of the PRS. Lots of neat things going on. I will add that all of this is a lot easier to do when you've got a great drummer and a great bass player playing with you. So a lot of times we tend to overdo our guitars to compensate for a poor rhythm section performance. So a special shout out and thank you to Justin Pacey for the amazing drumming on this and lots of other projects I've done. Let's listen. So much to experiment with and play with from an arranging perspective as well as a playing perspective. This is simple stuff, but the attention to detail and nuance is going to be where your tracks, particularly your massive guitars, are more massive than the next guy who doesn't really think about all this stuff and put the time and energy into being meticulous about crafting tones and thinking about how they're playing with each one of those tones. Again, if you'd like more help with your own guitar tone and guitar playing, click the link below and download my free PDF. I've also included a backing track for you that is just the drums and bass of what we're going through right here so that you can try some of these ideas with the same thing and compare to what I've done. We'll see you for more.